Hi everyone. I just wanted to do a quick video on the money weighted rate of return and the time weighted rate of return. Now, before we get started, I just wanted to say that as you've gone through your course notes, you probably looked at the formulas inside the notes and thought, whatever are these things, they look ridiculously complicated. And the truth is that these concepts, the money weighted rate of return and time weighted rate of return, are the easiest marks potentially you'll have on the exam. They're pretty core. Obviously, they might not come up in the exam, but these are core things to examine. So good chance, and make sure that you're good at them, because they're easy marks. They really are, and I'd expect you all to score very well. Okay, right. So 1. The money weighted rate of return. So simple formula really. Left hand side is the end fund value, then the right hand side is the start fund accumulated to the end, plus the cash flows accumulated at the time they come in to end. So if we do a little formula on this, so we say the fund end equals the fund start 1 plus I put a little m there to say it's money weighted, time t, where t runs is the amount of time from 0 to the end of the measurement period, plus cash flow, and I'll just put a k there, I think, 1 plus I to the m again, and then t minus k. So say the measurement period was 2 years, and then this k is, say, 1 as a cash flow at time 1. So you can see that this accumulates for 2 years here, this cash flow at this C1 here, then it does 2 minus 1, so it'll be 1 year accumulated. So that would just accumulate the cash flow to there, whereas the start fund goes all the way to there. Okay, right, so you can see this is pretty simple. We use sum to solve these things, exams. Now, to be honest, on your Casio calculators, you should be able to almost put this in as a formula and find exactly the answers to IM. If you can't, you can always use that first order approximation, that 1 plus, I to the m times by t, etc. And that will give you an indication of where to go. And then once you get that first order I to the m in, you can then plug it back in and see if you need to do a further iteration, something like that. But to be honest, with calculators today, you can probably almost, jump to the answer. Right. 2. Now, I was talking to a student the other day on time-weighted rate of return, and the student was saying these formulas which you give in the notes don't necessarily work in the questions, and that is a fair challenge. So I'll explain why, but I'll explain first of all what we're trying to do with this time-weighted rate of return. The key thing really is the method. So the method on this. So important. It's much more. You can't just learn a formula for it, because for the reasons why I'm going to talk about. So what do we try to do? TWRR tries to take out the effect of cash flows and the timing of cash flows on performance. So when you look at the formulas, you see a series of, ratios. I'm just going to draw it like this at the moment. So then something. So if I say F1 there, I say F0 there, plus a cash flow at time 0, and then F1 minus a cash flow at time 1. Sorry, that's a 1 there. Because F2 dot 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 dot. The problem is it's difficult actually to come up with a general formula which doesn't look ridiculous in terms of notation, and summations and all types of thing, and and also even depending on what the cash flows are doing and when they're measured, you have to think about that as well. So that's the cause of some of your angst. So I'm going to do some examples which highlight the importance of the method on this. Okay, so I'm just going to start a new sheet. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite it again though, just so we know where we are. I'm just going to put examples. Right. So time here, time 1 to 2, 0, 1 and 2. Then we're going to have a fund value. Guess what it starts at? Oh, it starts at 100, as you've probably guessed with me, most things do. At time 1, the fund value was 150, and at time 2, it was 200. Okay. Then we've got some cash flows as well, and we've got a cash flow here of minus 10. And I'll put in a square bracket, that means out. So that's going out. I know you think, well, Sean, obviously it's a minus, so that means out or bad or something, but it's nice to just clarify with that, because when you deal with accountants, often things are the other way around for reasons I'm not going to go into. You'll learn to love it when you're at work. Okay, right. So let's put a box around that. Whoops. Oh, God, crikey. Now let's find that. First of all, we're going to assume cash flows are after fund measurement. Sorry, I haven't spelled that right, but I got lazy and done sort of doctor, sort of GP handwriting at the end there. So it's 150. So at time 1, 150 is measured, and then a cash flow would come out of 10. Okay, so to find the return for each period, so we split. So TW splits return into periods defined by the cash flows. So if you can imagine, once we split out where the cash flows are, we can then take out and try to work out what the effect of them cash flows were. So let's look at the first period. Well, we know there's a cash flow of 1. A cash flow of 10 at time 1. So, but that cash flow is after the fund value. So that fund value between 0 and 1, put that under there, just in square bracket, just to highlight what time interval that is. So 150 on top multiplies by 100. Then we've got to think about between 1 and 2. The line again. We know the end fund is 200. There's no cash flows there. But here there was a 10, and that came out of the fund. So for performance of the fund, we want to try to take that out, which is the 10. So that 150 minus 10 gives us 140. So if you think at time equals 1, the fund value was 140, and then there's some investment performance to get it up to 200. So if we write this as if we now write this to try to find the time weighted rate of return, as you can see, I've put the T in there. T is now for time weighted, not a time variable, as it was in the example I used for the MWRR. 150 divided by 100 multiplied by 200 divided by 140. 1 second. 1.429. Probably should have known that off the top of my head. 1.429. And then I'll let you solve that. Now we're going to do the same example again, but this time we're going to assume cash flows before fund measurement. So we start as nothing happens at time 0 except we have 100, so that one goes on the bottom. Put that on there, but anyway, sorry, I got distracted there. 100. Now the cash flow is before the measurement, 150. So that means it came off before, and then it said, right, we'll take the cash flow off, then we'll measure the fund. So therefore, that fund just before the cash flow came out was 160. So now we've got the period 1 there. Put that again on the bottom there, just so you know the time interval. On this one now, we've got to measure between 1 and 2. So the 150 is after now the cash flow, so we don't need to do anything to that anymore. So if I then do that formula again, this is 200 by, so 20 over 15, 1/3, yeah, I think, and I'll let you work that through. So the reason I wanted to show you that is the reason why the formulas which I've got don't always appear to work for every example you've got. I should have made that clearer during the lecture, and that's a lesson for me for next year, but hopefully that helps. So I just wanted to go on to a couple of other things, so I'm going to go on to another page. Go on to here. Okay. So, purpose of MWRR and TWRR, not plus, just a comma. So this one tells us about the overall fund performance. So if you are a member of a pension scheme, you're not necessarily interested on how the performance occurred in terms of whether there was anything to do with investment timings or cash flows or anything. You just want to know how well your fund has performed. So that's what the MWRR does. TWRR, it's more about fund manager performance. So the reason why we strip out the cash flows is you can get lucky with time and of cash flows in terms of augmenting performance or going the other way and and ruining performance, destroying value. But actually, as a trustee of, say, a pension scheme, the people who look after who govern the investment principles and other things about the scheme, you're more interested in how well a fund manager has performed, as well as the overall performance, of course. But the truth is, you want to know, you've appointed the fund manager, you want to know how well he or she has performed. So they're the kind of differences there. When are they most different? When are the values of this and this different? Well, it's when cash flows, as you'd expect, where cash flows make a big difference. So you'll pull that out through questions. You'll work out where the source of investment return is and not. And I think the last thing I was going to say is the linked rate of return. I can't remember actually what that one is. I would have mentioned it. So what happens with the linked rate is that is very similar to the time weighted, but it splits the overall performance into regular intervals, even when there are no cash flows involved. So say you've got a period between 0 and 3, so 3 here, and you've got a cash flow at 2. This linked one will still, when it does its ratios, say, and I'll just do that, but there's a cash flow here, it will still do it between 0 and 1, 1 and 2, and 2 and 3. Whereas the time weighted would just do the intervals 0 to 2 and then 2 to 3. So I'm not massive. I've never been a massive fan of linked rate of return. I didn't go overboard on that in the teaching either. So focus on the money weighted rate of return and time weighted rate of return. I'll put some questions up for you later on today as well. I hope that helped and clarified from the lectures.